Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Iona Athletics podcast, your source for all the latest news surrounding the Iona Gaels. I'm your host, Mike Phillips. We got a good episode for you this week. Because there wasn't a ton going on for Thanksgiving here in New Rochelle with the sports teams, I had to do a different kind of interview this week. We're going to be joined by junior Austin Stellato, who is one of the voices of Iona Athletics on the ESPN Plus broadcasts. We'll talk to Austin about how he got involved with it, some of his experiences calling the games in just a bit. Be sure you're locked in until the end of the show for this week's schedule of Iona Athletics, the new games coming up, some new seasons actually starting as well. We'll get into all that, but we'll start with our weekly recap. We'll recap what happened in Thanksgiving week. I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving. We'll start that right now. There was not a ton happening. One note that the MAC Indoor Track and Field Coaches Polls were released. That season starts this week. The Iona men's program was voted third by the MAC's coaches, while the women's program was picked fifth in the preseason polls. Again, both programs begin their seasons this coming week. We'll tell you more about those details at the end of the show. Let's go ahead to Thursday, November 28th. Iona women's basketball down in Puerto Rico for the Puerto Rico Classic. They lost their opener to Washington 65-34. Morgan Rehu led the Gaels with 12 points and 8 rebounds. Let's go ahead to Friday, November 29th. The Gaels back in action again. Fell to Towson in Game 2 of the Puerto Rico Classic, 75-58. Iona actually led this game at the half, 34-31, but the Tigers scored 10 unanswered points at the start of the third quarter, to put the game out of reach. Morgan Rehu, again, star for Iona in this game. Career high, 23 points, 11 rebounds to get her a double-double in that game. Juana Camilion led the Gaels with 6 assists in the contest. And that's it. That's all that happened last week in Iona Athletics. Not a ton going on there, but we'll go our interview with Austin Stellato right after this.
Horn will sound, and that'll do it. It's back to back to back to back MAC championships for the Iona Gaels. 4 straight, 5 out of the last 7. Ricky McGill, 4 for 4 in his career, and the Iona Gaels are dancing again. They're back in the New York groove.
All right, we are back here on the Iona Athletics podcast. Joining us in the studio today was not an athlete, it's not a coach, it's one of the voices of Iona Athletics. If you watch the games on ESPN Plus, you'll hear this guy a lot. It is the great Austin Stellato is on the podcast with us today. Austin, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mike. Thanks for having me on. Excited to be here.
Excited to be here, too, and my 2-time broadcast partner on men's soccer games.
That's exactly it, and 2-0 in those games are Iona.
Yeah, you actually want to hear a funny story.
I would love to hear a funny story.
We were actually talking about this when we were pitching you for the Athletics podcast, talking to our friends John Stanko and Jack Clark, and they said when you went into the office last year, 2 years ago, to say you wanted to help out, that when you walked out, they and Steve Kultzo basically said, that kid's going to be special. So
wow, that's actually something I have not heard before. That makes me feel really good. Those are people, especially the likes of Stanko and Steve and Jack. Those are people that I've looked up to over the past couple of years. So that's a pretty cool story.
Yeah. So let's go back to that, mate. What made you decide? I'm going to walk in this office and say I want to help out with the games?
Well, I think it started my freshman year here at Iona, which was back in the fall of 2017, and just through a mutual friend, I was looking to get more involved in just sort of media stuff and communication stuff on campus here. I was involved with a couple of the other campus organizations, but they suggested maybe to try to help out with the ESPN 3 productions. So they sent me Steve Kultzo's email. I reached out to him, and I helped out with one game, and then they basically asked me what my main interests were, and even though I was a freshman, I was like, well, if I'm going to be honest, my main interest is being on air, and I recognize that, maybe I'm a freshman, I won't get that opportunity, but, those are my, that's what my interest is in. And then that was my first semester, and then second semester came around, and got an opportunity to be on the air.
Yeah, so what was the first game you called? Do you remember that?
So the first game I was doing, I was the analyst doing the color commentary with Jonathan Stanko on a women's basketball game between Siena and Iona. Siena won the game. I don't remember the exact score, but that was a very fun game. It was very, I was definitely a little bit nervous because it's something I hadn't done before. But yeah, that was the first game, women's basketball, Siena versus Iona. I'll never forget it.
Did they let you do the interview after the game? Usually the analyst does the interview on those.
Yes, I did do. I'm pretty sure I did the interview. Sienna had a really good player that year. Forget her first name. Her last name was Scarborough, and she had like 20 something points, and Sienna won. But so I did do the post game interview.
Yeah, so that was a fun interview, I bet.
Yeah, no, it was. I was definitely nervous because I didn't know exactly what to ask. Like, the game stuff. I think I was more nervous for the interview, I'll say, because then it's just me on the camera. It's just me and who I'm talking to is my first ever one, and it's somebody that I didn't know, some Sienna women's basketball player, but I think it all went well, and it was definitely that game and those first couple of games I did, definitely a big learning experience.
Okay, so obviously you've done women's basketball. Like, what other sports have you called for us?
So any game that we have through ESPN 3 or ESPN Plus, I've done. So women's basketball, softball, lacrosse, men's and women's soccer, and volleyball. I'm pretty sure that those are it, and I've helped out with the men's basketball broadcast as well. But yeah, so pretty much any sport that we broadcast here, I've been on the call for.
Yeah, for those who wonder about why he doesn't call men's basketball, that's sort of a thing where like they do bring people in to do men's basketball, but he has been on the sideline reporter for men's basketball.
Right. Yeah. So I have done sideline for a couple of games, and let me tell you, that is a very fun experience to just be a part of that broadcast crew for a men's basketball game, because men's basketball games here at Iona, they're just. I think you and I would both agree. They're just something different about those games, especially last year. Like, that was the first year I did sideline. It was this past semester, so back in this past winter, and obviously that was a very good team. And both of the games that I did 2 games on sideline. Both of them were very good games. One of them was a Quinnipiac-Iona game that went down to the wire. Quinnipiac won that one, and then the second game I did was Senior Day versus Canisius, and got to interview Ricky McGill after his Senior Day performance, where he dropped 30 points, and that was a really fun day.
Yeah, have you had a chance to speak to Coach Clusi yet or no?
This season,
or in general?
Yeah. So I've had opportunities to interview him. I've seen him around like the Heinz Center every now and then. Like, I'll say hello, how are you? Really, it's very insightful to listen to him talk basketball, and to talk about his team, especially last year, just because of how far that team came a year ago, with all of the new players that were added last year, to see them come together, and just sort of his thoughts, when I was able to ask him down the stretch and then into the MAC tournament. He's just one of the brightest basketball minds I think you'll ever see.
Yeah, for sure. And let's take men's basketball off the table for a second, because you don't actually do like direct play-by-play on those or color commentating. So, of the other sports, which one's your favorite to call?
My favorite sport to call? That's a tough one. I think it's kind of changed over the years. Like, last year, I probably would have said women's basketball, just because now, like, I've followed the women's basketball team for 2 seasons, and I love doing the women's basketball games. But I was a baseball guy growing up, and I really love Iona softball. Like, I love the pace of the play. Like, I really love how they play. I really love how the Iona softball team plays. And so, honestly, like, let me just first off say, I love every sport that I call, and I think it's such a great opportunity that I have been given to be a part of all of these broadcasts through all these different sports. But if I had to pick a favorite, I'd probably have to go either women's basketball or softball. But lately, soccer's been creeping up there. Soccer games have been a lot of fun to call as well. Yeah,
and the ones you called this year, I mean, the women's team, I think, won 3 in a row that you called. The men's team, we had the dramatic win over Ryder. You had that Niagara game where Lenny Lopez scores. The 2 we called, they happened to win, so that was good.
Right, fun, yeah. I've had some exciting. There's been some exciting games this year, and I, as a broadcaster, all I hope for is an exciting game. That's what I want. I want a close game. I want an exciting game. And I've been fortunate that this, fall season, I've had, quite a bit of those.
Yeah. And you obviously, it's better when you do it with a partner, but there have been times, I remember last year, especially during lacrosse season, a couple times you had to do it by yourself, be both the play-by-play guy and the color guy. How was that?
So I actually first started doing games by myself last year with soccer.
Yeah.
Soccer and volleyball, I started out doing some games by myself, and I guess to describe it in one word is it's a challenge. It really is a challenge to fill up that time by yourself, especially with sports like soccer and like lacrosse, because they are long games, and there's a lot of dead air time that you need to fill in those sports, where when you have a partner, it's easy. You can just work off of each other. But when you're by yourself, you have to kind of work off of yourself. I guess what I will say about it is it is definitely difficult. It is a challenge, but I'm one who really likes a challenge. And, when I saw that I would be doing those games by myself, it, made me prep even more, like store some stories in the back pocket, where, whip them out when I needed to. But it's definitely an experience, and it's very rewarding, and it's very tiring.
Most of the time, though, you're with a partner, and your most frequent partner has been our friend Ian Sachs, who fellow Iona graduate. He tends to do a lot more of the analyst role when you're on, so you guys have a good chemistry. What goes into that magic? I just feel like, we work so well together.
I think that's a very good question. First off, it's something I really haven't thought of before. I think Ian and I think we have similar mindsets when we're doing games, and I think just naturally the way I'm doing play-by-play or he's doing color, or even when the roles have been switched, I think we just have a very good rapport with each other. We're able to pick up and off of each other very often throughout the broadcast. And I think also is that we like to have a lot of fun, and we have a lot of fun when we're on the air. And I think that's a big part of what goes into us sounding so well together and creating that magic that you mentioned. Because at the end of the day, we need to have fun out there. Like, that's, the people on the playing court or the field, like, they should be striving to win, but also having fun. And there's no reason why we can't be having fun as well. And I think just the relationship that Ian and I have built up over the past year or so has also contributed to that. I think of Ian as one of my better friends.
Yeah, I also want to go back to your moment that we started off this segment with, which was you got to do the radio call of the MAC title game last year, the men's title game with Ian, and you got the call that made WFAN afterwards the back-to-back MAC championship. So what was that experience like going with the crew from Iona up there to help out at the MAC championship and then call the game?
So it was really, the entire weekend was such a great experience. You mentioned I was up there technically working for the MAC for the first two or three rounds of the tournament, for the first, second, and third rounds, just doing, I was a PA production assistant, just helping out. And then once Iona advanced to the finals, they had asked me if I was going to be around to do the radio call, and was not going to say no to that. So went back up to Albany after being there for a couple of days, and met Ian up there, and that was just honestly one of the best experiences of my life. I would say that may sound cheesy, may sound dramatic, but I think what some people may not know is that I've always grown up with Iona. My father went here, his uncle went here, and my dad's always been a big Iona basketball fan. So I've been going to Iona basketball games, often since I was a kid, and so to be up there for the championship game and being able to be on the air was really just an experience like no other. It was a lot of fun. I was sweating a lot just because it was very hot in the arena, and it was a close game for a while. And then down the stretch, obviously Iona pulled away, but it was an experience like no other, and I was just very, very grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah, and how awesome was it when you hear the next day, my call got played on Boomer and Gio, or it got played on Joe and Evan's show on WFAN.
So fun fact, as I'm leaving the Times Union Center, Jonathan Stanko, who he did the call back in 2018, and he was like, hey, make sure you have WFAN on the radio on the drive home, because we're going to send them the sound. They may play it. So I was like, okay, and had the sound on, and I believe it was the 2 a.m. sports update was the first time they played it. And I remember I was in my car waiting for it, and then they played it, and that was just really, you can't even put it into words. As somebody, I was just 19 at the time, hearing my voice on WFEN was very cool. And then when I woke up to a flurry of text messages from, friends, family, and just the sound from Boomer and Gio. That was a very cool stretch of time in my life, I will say that.
Yeah, it was true, and you got a lot out of this. So for nobody's saying they have to go on the air like you have, but what's your message to the students out there saying, maybe should I go help out with the game? Should I go help out? What would you tell them?
I would say just send an email or talk to somebody. I think we're always looking for people to help out, and I think just the experience of being involved and being on a different side of games, especially as we, move deeper and deeper into basketball season, to be on that sort of behind the scenes side of things is very interesting. It's very unique. And I think Iona, there's not many other places like this where you get an opportunity to be as involved with broadcasts like these. These are ESPN broadcasts. These are going on ESPN3, ESPN Plus. These are quality broadcasts, and I think to be able to be involved and be on, again, the behind-the-scenes side of things is very cool. So if anybody's looking to get involved, it's it's very easy. Send an email, talk to somebody, and they'll, we'll help you out because we're always looking for people to help out.
It's a lot of fun, and also that people don't realize that sort of little broadcast crew becomes a unique little group. Like there's a group basically carried over from last year of people who did at the end of last year came back this year, and this a little familiarity you get to build up. Oh, I know some people through this as opposed to my classes or work. It's a new little group you can find yourself in.
Yeah, exactly. And I think just thinking back to the November 10th, between you, myself, Ian, Aiden Callahan, Garrett Murray, we were all just kind of hanging around the truck after the game just talking, and that's something that I think we've seen happen a lot this season, and I think there's just a different camaraderie between us all, and I hope that it can extend to everybody else who's helping out with the broadcast as well.
All right, well, this is a great conversation, Austin. Thanks for stopping by, taking time to appear on the Iona Athletics podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Mike. Enjoyed it.
All right, and there you have it. That was our interview with Austin Stellato, one of the voices of Iona Sports on the ESPN app, on the game broadcasts. For our full interview with Austin, be sure to check out our YouTube page, youtube.com/ICGales.
Sunday, Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. Thursday, Friday, happy days. The weekend comes, my cycle hums, ready to race to you.
All right, it's time to look ahead to the week to come in Iona Athletics. A not as busy week as we've had in the recent past, a little busier than last week, but here we go. Wednesday, December 4th, men's basketball team on the road again. They'll be taking on UConn in non-conference action. So the Gaels will be up in Stores to take on the Huskies. Let's go ahead to Thursday, December 5th. The women's basketball team on the road as well. They'll be taking on Central Michigan in another non-conference matchup. Let's go ahead to Friday, December 6th. It's time for track and field season. Iona Track and Field season opener for indoor track. They'll be at the Fordham season opener. And the swimming team will be down in Baltimore for day one of the H2 Ounds Invitational in Baltimore. Again, day one of the H2 Ounds Invitational in Baltimore. Let's go ahead to Saturday, December 7th. Track and Field, day two, another season opening event at the Sharon Collier Danville. Swimming in Baltimore, day two, H2 Ounds Invitational. So busy day for swimming and track on Friday and Saturday. Last but not least, Sunday, December 8th, women's basketball returns home. They'll be taking on Seton Hall at 1 at the Heinz Athletic Center. Should be a fun matchup there between the Gaels and the Pirates. Again, that game will be at 1 o'clock at the Heinz Athletic Center. And that's all we have for you on this edition of the Iona Athletics podcast. For full game times information, check out our website, www.icgales.com. You can also follow us on social media. Just search for our handle at @ICGales across all major social media platforms. We have another brand new episode for you coming up next week. Until then, keep fighting the good fight, Gael Nation.